And I think to myself, the arrogance of these Democrats. They pass Obamacare. They say, hey, everybody, here's Obamacare. And the red state people, the Republican people, are the ones that said, we don't want this. This is an insane program. You're just stealing from us to give these healthcare resources to other people, to deadbeats and third world migrants. Republicans said, we don't want this. And Democrats said, too bad. We're making it mandatory. You have to buy it. And then when people buy it because it's mandatory and they have to buy it, then the Democrats, when the program goes in crisis, says, oh, look at all those people in red states with Obamacare. It's like, UMFers, are you kidding me? You made this happen. All right, let's talk about ACA. Now the Democrats call it ACA, the Affordable Care Act. Remember when it used to be called Obamacare, when Obama was so proud of it? And I'll share my experience with Obamacare. I actually had the precursor, Romney Care in Massachusetts. That came out a couple years before Obamacare came out for the nation. But the experience was the same for me either way. I had a affordable health insurance through the company I worked for, a wife and 2 little kids, a reasonable deductible, reasonable copays. Everything was fine. And then Obamacare came out. And my health insurance, my monthly health insurance costs went up 4-fold. And they gave me a $10,000 deductible. We were a healthy family. We never had $10,000 a year in health expenses. We were never going to meet the deductible. And until you meet the deductible, you're not getting anything from the health insurance you're paying 4 times as much for. And I called them up. I said, what the hell happened? We haven't had any big medical claims. We're normally healthy. This is a ridiculous arrangement. I can't pay you 4 times as much for health insurance that will never pay me anything because I'll never hit the deductible. But of course, you had to buy it because they made it illegal not to buy it. They would fine you financially if you didn't buy one of their plans. And what was actually going on, folks, was that the entire modus operandi of Obamacare, its purpose for existing, was not to reduce costs for working class Americans who were paying for their own health insurance. It was a massive redistribution program. It was to redistribute healthcare resources from working class Americans paying for their health insurance to people who were not working class, who were American homegrown deadbeats and or were third world migrants in our nation getting free healthcare at our expense. So when my insurance went up 4-fold and then they made it impossible for me to ever realize any benefit of it with a $10,000 deductible, what was happening with all that money? I was not getting health care. My family was not getting health care. All that money was being taken from me to provide health care for other people, for homegrown American deadbeats and third world migrants. In other words, for Democrat constituents. So the Democrats were punishing working class Americans who paid for their own health insurance in order to reward their political constituents. It's all a resource reallocation program. And although it was pitched with the lie that Obama said it was going to bend the cost curve down. Remember that? It's going to make healthcare more affordable. How do they do that? Well, they provide you with a subsidy based on your income. So if it was going to be $1,000 a month, they'd give you a couple $100, $300, whatever it might be. So that made it more affordable for you. Here's the problem with a subsidy for anything, my friends. Subsidies can only make things more costly than they already were, because who's ever providing the service or the product that's being subsidized simply increases their cost to capture the value of the subsidy. If a cup of tea is $5 and the government comes out and says, we're starting a program that subsidizes tea $100 per cup, well, guess what happens? The price of every cup of tea goes up to $105 because for the buyer, the pain is the same. They're only expending $5. But the provider of the tea says, well, they have $105 to spend on it. We may as well capture the subsidy. This is what happens in college costs when they make loans readily available to effectively subsidize the cost of education. At colleges and universities, the colleges and universities just increase their cost to capture that subsidy. And of course, the same was happened in Obamacare. So whenever you subsidize something, the only outcome that can possibly happen is for the cost to go up. That's just economic reality. And what's happening now is at the end of this year, there's a bunch of bonus subsidies that are going to expire. So Obamacare has always been too expensive. I was going to say even with the subsidies. Actually, it's too expensive because of the subsidies. And then COVID hit. And the Democrats are like, holy crap, the cost of this Obamacare stuff is really through the roof for everybody. They might hold us Democrats accountable. Remember, Obamacare was passed into law on Christmas Eve. 100% Democrat votes, zero, not one Republican vote. Even they couldn't get even the squishiest Republican to vote for Obamacare. So they own it. They own it. I mean, they're trying not to own it, but they own it. So the cost per month kept going up for everybody. The service got worse. The cost went up. And they said, hey, COVID hit. Let's use COVID, as they did use COVID for so many other reasons. Let's use COVID as an excuse to increase the subsidy for health insurance. So that reduced the per person cost. But again, what's the only thing subsidies can do is drive costs up. So they increase the subsidy, costs go up even more. But to get the subsidies, the bonus subsidies passed in the first place, they had to have a deadline on it. And they said, well, when COVID's no longer a crisis, the COVID extra bonus subsidies will go away. Well, now they're going away. They're going away at the end of this year. And because those bonus subsidies are going away, people are starting to get now the renewal notices. They're being exposed to the true cost of Obamacare without the bonus subsidies. And it's horrific. It's horrifically costly. But that's not a failure of Republicans. That's a failure of Obamacare.
Democrats are digging in on their demands to extend enhanced Obamacare subsidies that expire in January before they agree to reopen the government. Now, a new poll shows 3/4 of Americans say they actually do want the subsidies extended, including 59% of Republicans and 57% of MAGA supporters are in favor. But do voters want the government shut down over this fight? And what exactly are those subsidies? Who gets them, and what happens if they go away?
And I think to myself, the arrogance of these Democrats. They pass Obamacare. They say, hey, everybody, here's Obamacare. And the red state people, the Republican people, are the ones that said, we don't want this. This is an insane program. You're just stealing from us to give these healthcare resources to other people, to deadbeats and third world migrants. Republicans said, we don't want this. And Democrats said, too bad. We're making it mandatory. You have to buy it. And then when people buy it because it's mandatory and they have to buy it, then the Democrats, when the program goes in crisis, says, oh, look at all those people in red states with Obamacare. It's like, UMFers, are you kidding me? You made this happen. We fought this desperately. By the way, thank you, Chief Justice John Roberts. It's a tax. Much appreciated, brother. And they don't want to call it anything. Look, here they do have Obamacare on the bottom. They keep referring to it as the ACA. Like in the text of the post here. If Republicans let ACA subsidies expire, your health care premiums will skyrocket. $7,000 a year now, 8.5% income would jump to 25%, nearly 30%. That's the reality for millions. They call it ACA. No one wants to call it Obamacare anymore. I wonder why. Because everything Democrats touch turns to shit, and that includes health care. So now Obamacare's turned to shit. And they don't want to associate it with Obama anymore. It's just like this. Who knows? Who knows where this ACA program came from? Who knows? By the way, anyone have the notion that 8.5% of income or 10% of income, is that not already insane? An insane amount of, by the way, gross income before taxes. Before taxes. Sombrero Jeffries talks about this. Listen.
Everyday Americans. One example, a married couple that makes $85,000 per year currently may pay about $8,000 for their health insurance coverage.
$85,000 a year in gross income, paying almost $8,000 a year for ACA coverage. Does that not strike anybody as insane? 10% of gross income? Not for health care. It's not like they have cancer and they suddenly have a huge health expense they need to pay for. It's for health insurance. That's not normally paying out benefits for people who are in a healthy state. It's for potential theoretical resources you may or may not need. 10% of your gross income.
Throughout the 12-month period of time. That in and of itself is already far too expensive. But that couple that makes $85,000 a year could see their premiums increase to $24,000 a year. There is no way they can afford that. They're going to lose their coverage or be.
Why can't they afford it? Because it's too expensive. Why is it too expensive? Because of Obamacare. It's inherent to Obamacare. And now they want to pretend it's Republicans. And by the way, even the Washington Post has to admit the real problem with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is that it was never actually affordable. It was never actually affordable. That's not what they told me when I complained about it at the time. They told me to go screw. Then they say, well, we always knew there were going to be winners and losers. So I'm a loser. The guy who's a productive member of society, pays for health care for my family. I'm the loser because they politically want to reallocate my health care resources to deadbeats and third world migrants. And they wonder why they've lost political legitimacy. I saw this graph. This was interesting. I'm not going to play the video because it's kind of boring, but it's social, it's infrastructure, America resources in the form of like social services, welfare, cash EBT cards, food, Medicaid, housing, all funded by the government. And the Democrats keep telling us, well, undocumented illegals don't qualify for any of these things. But you know what they do? It's all a lie. All they do is they hand every illegal migrant a document. And now they're magically all documented. All these people that Biden let in over the border, they were trained. They were left-wing NGOs out in the Mexican desert telling these people, hey, when you get to the U.S. border, just say the word asylum. Can you repeat it for me? Asylum. Yes, just say the word asylum. Then you get an asylum certificate, and now you're documented in America, and you do qualify for all this. So all the Democrats do is they keep saying undocumented migrants don't qualify, and then they just document everybody. That's all. And these asylum claims are utter bullshit. 95% of them get rejected for the obvious reason that under international law and practical reality, if you're in a nation that's a hellhole, you're supposed to seek asylum in the next nation you enter, the one you escape to. You don't get to go through 20 nations until you get to America and seek asylum here. They're not seeking asylum. They're seeking economic opportunity. And all of this largesse. For most of these categories, legal and especially illegal migrants, a greater percent of those groups get welfare, cash, food, Medicaid, subsidized housing than do our own Americans. And by the way, the illegal migrants, of course, should just be deported. Why are they getting a penny of any of this? Why don't we just tell them you're an illegal migrant, go home? We don't have anything for you. But what about the legal migrants? Why are 52% of legal migrants getting welfare? Why are we importing people into America that we have to pay for? How is that a net addition to the quality of life of our American nation? How is that in America's national interest? These columns, these blue and orange columns should be zero. Charts like this shouldn't exist. It is madness. I thought this post was really interesting because I'm always telling all of you that there's 90 million illegal migrant third world invaders, illegals in America, and another 90 million legal migrants like Indians in America. And people always tell me, Andrew, it can't be 90 million illegals. The estimates I see are 20 million, 40 million, 50 million, 90 million. That's insanely high. And all I can say is every discrete piece of data I see on this suggests to me only that my estimate of 90 million is low. Because every time we actually have to do any counting, we find bigger numbers, almost infinite numbers. And Byron York here notes Trump's immigration law enforcement effort might also shed light on the number of people in the U.S. illegally. It's never been precisely known because that's the nature of unlawful conduct, right? You don't just get to count it all. It's hidden. It's never been precisely known how many illegal migrants are in America. Actions of blue city and state officials suggest it might be bigger than estimated. And he doesn't say exactly why that is, but I have an idea. The ferocity with which blue city and state officials fight to prevent these deportations of these illegal migrants from America suggests to me that they are here in large enough numbers that they form the actual political constituency of these Democrat city mayors and blue state governors. Who do politicians fight for? They fight for their constituents. There are enough illegal migrants, I suggest, subject to lawful deportation, that form political constituency for these Democrats that they can't afford to have them deported. They won't have a constituency anymore. Our nation has been profoundly invaded. It's just terrible. This is also interesting. So in 2023, for all the talk about Democrats today about how illegal migrants don't get health care. In 2023, NBC did a news report about the immigration crisis, and they reported that in New York City, public hospitals, 25% of the patients are illegal migrants. 25%. And then in 2025, suddenly they report there are no illegal migrants getting health care in America. Here's the report from just 2 years ago.
The border crisis surging. Officials telling NBC News there were over 200,000 illegal crossings at the southern border last month, and a record 3 million migrants crossed the border in the last year. Now a new warning 1,000 miles away in New York City, where officials tell us resources are overwhelmed. Across public hospitals in New York City, a quarter of the patients are now migrants. Over
A quarter of the patient, but if you ask them today, they'll say, no. There's no undocumented migrants getting health care in America, as if the resources aren't being consumed. Because, of course, again, all they do is here's a document, go ahead. Now you're fine. Now you get to go on welfare. If progressives did not have lies, they would have nothing to say at all.